The Hard Count is presented by BetMGM. As y'all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this college football season. We'll be using their lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for all of you each week. Now, when you join BetMGM, you get access to a variety of parlay selection features like same-game parlays, live betting options, and more. If you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, use bonus code HARDCOUNT, and you'll get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how that works. 1, download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code HARDCOUNT. 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code HARDCOUNT when you sign up. Let's make this college football season 1 for the books. Let's make it legendary. Let's get to the show. Welcome into the Hard Count, the show for college football fans that know it's always the quiet weekends. It's always weekends you're looking at that don't have quite as much juice from the Thursday perspective, but then you get to the Saturday and you're in the belly of the beast. You're like, actually, this Saturday's awesome. We got chaos across the board. Actually, that game that I thought wasn't going to be as awesome, it ended up being the game of the day. We appreciate y'all making this show what it is. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. As always, presented by BetMGM. It is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Ridiculous. It's already this late in the season. Last one on the face of the planet, though, going to make sure we make it count. We had some more rankings last night. Okay, now if you're subscribed, you already got our reaction to those rankings because we do that in real time. Reese Davis jumps on the air, gives you the rankings in his sweet, leathery voice. He drops that on us, and we react to it in real time. But we want to make sure that gets into the full show for those of y'all that just consume the podcast or for those of y'all that just watch the full show. Appreciate y'all doing that. Here's our reaction to those rankings from last night. So I want to start talking about these rankings at the number 16 spot. All right, because Georgia Tech is sitting there at 16, but they're not listed is the top ACC team as it stands right now. That's Miami sitting there at 13. But if you're Georgia Tech, I understand how frustrating it is to see that Miami logo ahead of you, and you're like, what in the world? We got one loss. We control our destiny in the ACC. Why is Miami getting all this love with 2 losses? I understand that. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Woosah, just handle business. Win the ACC, you will be in the college football playoff. No more discussion about it. So that's just a little quick mini therapy session. I understand how frustrating it is because of all that you've done this year. Just handle business. 16, doesn't matter. Just win your conference. You're in there like swimwear. At number 15, you got Oregon. All right? Or, not Oregon. USC, USC, you play Oregon this weekend. That's how you should be thinking. You should have Oregon top of mind if you're USC, just like me when it comes to that ranking. Jumping up as many spots as you did all the way to 15 from last week's rankings to this week's rankings after the dub over Iowa, it's on, man. It's on. This is what you hoped for, wished for, prayed for in the preseason, was a spot going into the last couple weeks of the season at a college football playoff berth. You being at 15 this week screams to me, if you beat Oregon, set yourself up with a chance to go beat UCLA for that Liberty Bell, and you are chilling in that field of 12. Maybe not chilling, maybe sweating a little bit on Selection Sunday, but I think you're in the college football playoff should you beat Oregon. That's what you being at 15 says to me. Now at 14, Vandy, we turned. I love you. We're in Nashville. I don't know if you have a chance to jump into that top 12 if this whole field were to hold as is. I don't think you have enough meat on the bone to jump anybody, but Vandy at 14, no problem with it. Now Miami at 13, this is where it gets interesting. So like we already established, Miami's ranked 13th per the committee, but the way this whole discussion works, they're the highest-ranked ACC team, so they're ahead of the highest-ranked G5 team, who's at the 12th seed, so you're seeded 11th, Miami, if you're tracking all that. Pretty nice to have head-to-head over Notre Dame right now. Nice little feather in the cap if you're the Hurricanes. I'm sitting here watching Miami get listed off higher and higher each week in this Rankings Reveal show. And at first I was like, oh, that's good for Miami. It probably feels good a little bit in Coral Gables to get some respect from the committee, be ranked at a decent spot. And they keep climbing every week. And I'm like, hang on. Are the Canes going to do this? Is Miami about to get in the college football playoff as an at-large bid? And hear me clearly. If they got into that field of 12, I think the Canes could win a game or 2. Don't let the Canes get in the dance is all I'm going to say when it comes to that. Now, Miami, you probably need a little bit of help. Not probably. You definitely need a little bit of help to get into the ACC title game. I think your path in would be as an at-large bid. So, again, I still think that you probably need a little bit of help to find your way into the college football playoff. But, if I'm asking for some chaos in November, I think I'm about to get it if I'm a Hurricane fan. So, Seeded 11th, ranked 11th is BYU, ranked 12th is Utah. We will address those specific teams when they become more relevant to this college football playoff conversation. I think that could be the case here in future weeks, especially if BYU finds their way into the Big 12 title game and wins it. But just shout out to the two teams in Utah, handle business. BYU, will see where you're at. Now, Alabama at 10. Bama, I know it's scary to see that number 10 next to your logo. I get it. Like me personally, I'm scared of heights, and I am man enough to admit it. I went to the Grand Canyon as a kid, cried the whole time. Not a fan of heights. Specifically, because you look over the edge, long way down. You walk right up to that sucker, and like you're not over the edge, but it's still scary to look over and see your fate. Bama, I know you're at the edge right now. I know it's scary. Beat Auburn, you're in good shape. That's all I'm going to say. Beat Auburn. Ty Simpson, go back to robot mode. Kalen DeBoer, go back to mad scientist mode. Jeremy Bernard, go back to Blitnikoff mode. We're going to be more than fine. So I know it's scary. I know it feels uncomfortable. But even if Bama finds their way to the SEC championship game and loses, gets a third loss to insert whatever team you want there, A&M, Georgia, like lose a game in the SEC title game, you're still in the college football playoff. I feel extremely confident saying that out loud. So 10, I know it feels bad, but you're still in the dance. Get us in the dance. We'll cause some problems when we get there, is my opinion if I'm Kalen DeBoer and the boys. Now, at number 9, I wasn't sure the committee would do this, okay? Number 9 is Notre Dame. And the way that it feels here, seeing you pop up at 9 after beating a top 25 team by 22 points, to me, this is the committee saying, hey, Notre Dame, this is kind of where we got to keep you, unless we get some more chaos in front of you. All right, Oklahoma jumped them up to 8, which we'll talk about here in a second. But the reason why that's significant, if you're Notre Dame, the 9th spot doesn't host a college football playoff game. So all the good vibes about the Southland Invitational and all the things that we were saying in the preseason, like you're happy to be in the college football playoff. There's no shame in being number 9. And also after that first round, it doesn't matter where they play the games anyway. But I think barring some extra chaos in front of them, Notre Dame, that's kind of your spot, is I think what the committee is saying there. You were 9 last week, you're 9 this week. You don't apologize for being in the college football playoff, but that's kind of the ceiling here for Notre Dame at this point in time. Now, Oklahoma, the committee is saying, we see you, John Mateer. We see you, Brent Venables. We see you going into Tuscaloosa, creating 3 turnovers, finding a way, scratching, clawing, beating a top 4 at the time, Alabama. We're going to give you credit for that. This is the committee, and I appreciate them doing this. This is the committee not just going off of standings, but going off of, no, we think that's a good football team. We see them playing good football. Their starting quarterback had some issues with his thumb early on in the year, middle part of the year, rather. We're going to go ahead and just say we think Oklahoma's a good football team. And people can cry about, SEC bias and what have you. Like, listen, if we're talking about bias and Notre Dame's getting jumped, like, I am as pro Notre Dame as there is. Like, nobody is showing bias against that brand and that logo. If anything, it helps the college football playoff committee to have Notre Dame in the dance. So I think there's no issues here with Oklahoma being at 8. And also, if you do have an issue with Oklahoma at 8, if you're a Notre Dame fan, guess what? You're going to get to play them in round 1 as it stands right now. So Oklahoma at 8, I see you. I appreciate the committee just saying we think you're a good football team. We're going to reward that. And, yeah, no problems with that, with Oklahoma being at 8. Now, I probably wouldn't have dropped Notre Dame after their win, but I get what the committee is saying, and I appreciate them rewarding good football. Oregon at 7, they were talking about, they being them on the broadcast, Reese Davis, Greg McElroy, Joey Galloway, do a phenomenal job, by the way. They were saying if Oregon loses one of these last 2, they don't know if they're in the college football playoff. I don't feel that way, barring like a Michigan jumping up in there, or I guess you could have a conversation about Miami. I just personally, I'd be shocked if we saw Oregon drop out of this top 10 with a loss to a top 15 USC, or if they beat a top 15 USC even and they lose to an unranked Washington. I still think that at that point, Oregon would have enough feathers in the cap to be in at 10-2. That's my own opinion. But we'll see. The precedent in some ways has been set with Alabama dropping as far as they did after losing to 2 points at home, or by 2 points at home to an Oklahoma team. So keep a pulse on Oregon, but again, I still think 10-2 gets you in. Ole Miss at 6. I'm really curious to see if Ole Miss can just stay the course here. Like, Mississippi State's a good football team. I don't even question if Ole Miss can get into college football playoff. I think that's pretty much a team you can write in Sharpie into the bracket, whatever rank you want to put next to them, more power to you. 6 is the right spot, but how do you handle the Lane Kiffin noise at this point in time? Because everyone has Twitter. outside that locker room, inside that locker room, everyone watches McAfee. Everyone knows what the conversation is right now around Oxford. And it's not that Ole Miss is a college football playoff team. It's not that, wow, they're going to go ahead and make a run. Wow, look at this great year Ole Miss is having. The conversation right now is like, is Lane Kiffin going to be there next year? Going into this week, it was like, is Lane Kiffin going to be there going to the college football playoff? Like, it sounds like there is a deadline in place. Now, I understand Lane Kiffin since come out and said that's not the case. I think Ole Miss will make a decision sooner rather than later. How does Ole Miss handle all that noise? Texas Tech at 5. Hey, if Texas Tech keeps that 5 spot, guess who they draw in the first round? A 1 Tulane in the G5 spot. We'll circle back on Tulane here in a second. But Texas Tech at 5, no conversation to be had there. They've looked the part. They are the part. And to me, I think even if they lose in the Big 12 title game, they may be entitled to a college football playoff spot. As in that large bid, that's how good they've been, especially if they only have 1 loss in the regular season. Georgia at 4. Y'all, I know A&M's at 3. I think Georgia might be playing the best of any SEC team right now. And now, I'm not saying Georgia shouldn't be ranked at 4 or that they should be ranked higher or anything like that, but I'm just saying the brand of ball they're playing right now, the momentum they have, the way the offense looks, the physicality of the run game, the defense kind of getting their footing, the way that Georgia's humming right now, I would not want to play them. So I know there's a bunch of just quadratic equations and different calculators you got to use to figure out the SEC tiebreakers. If Georgia gets to the SEC title game, if Georgia gets in the college football playoff, looking how they look right now, I would just, hey, hang on. Hang on for dear life is all I'd say there. A&M at 3, no conversation to be had there. You can't move them up after they looked the way they looked in the first half against South Carolina. But you do raise the eyebrow looking at how good they looked in the second half against South Carolina and say, okay, it's a team with some juice. We already knew that before. That's verified. A&M at 3, Indiana at 2, Ohio State at 1. If you're Ohio State, like, people are going to say, you haven't played anybody, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. It's like, dude, they've looked like they're the best team in college football. And that's what I respect the committee for. Other things favor Indiana and A&M, putting them at the top. The committee is saying, you're playing good football. We're watching you play good football. We recognize it's good football. We're going to reward good football. We'll put you as the number 1 team in college football on these latest rankings, and we fully support that on this show. Now, I want to give a quick shout-out to our man, Caden Smith. You might know him as Cato. He said on this show during this week, he was like, listen, the committee sometimes, when it comes to that G5 spot, look at records. And they see a team in JMU that's got less losses, but maybe hasn't looked as good playing the sport of football as some other teams. I wonder what they do with that spot. And Cato actually lobbied for a 1 Tulane to be in the G5 spot. Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret here. I think the committee watches this show. God bless them. They want a little insider baseball, and we appreciate them for it. Tulane at the G5 spot. All right, so we support that. We co-signed that. Cato called that from the rafters. Tulane in the G5 spot. Going to be seeded 12th, and they would, of course, play a Texas Tech. So let's check in on what these matchups would look like here as I shift over to my computer for a quick second to get a look at that. All right, round 1, like I said, if you hate where Oklahoma is, if you're a Notre Dame fan and you think that was messed up, that was SEC bias, guess what? You get to go play them in Norman to prove a point if things should hold as they do right now. Oregon playing Alabama in Eugene. I just keep saying this. I would love so much for the sports world to get to see a college football playoff atmosphere in Autzen. I think it would be cinematic. I think it would be kismet. I think it would be a glorious thing. I think it would solve a lot of the problems in our world. I'll leave it at that. Ole Miss and Miami in the Portal Bowl, if you will. If Miami gets in as that large spot, that would be just absolutely phenomenal. Then Texas Tech and Tulane, that in itself will be a fun game to watch. I think Tulane's frisky. I think that they would give an inspired effort, if nothing else, but Texas Tech might just be a wagon here. And then those teams that all have to bye according to this current projected bracket, I think that is about how it should look. Again, as these rankings get further and further along, they mean more, but when Selection Sunday hits, that's the real ranking that counts. So be as worked up as you want to about where your specific team is, but in the context of these rankings, understand we got some more runway, more games to be played. Those rankings will more than likely move, shift, and shake. Speaking of moving and shifting and shaking, what's up with Lane Kiffin, huh? How's that for a segue? Lane Kiffin, I've said many times, I think he should stay at Ole Miss. That is my take on this. He has proven he can win at the highest level at Ole Miss by nature of them right now trending towards being a college football playoff kind of team. But we've had some motion, if you will, around a one Lane Kiffin when it comes to what's being said about him in the public eye. A couple of reports out there. One report is that his family visited Baton Rouge and Gainesville respectively. So if you're not going to take the Florida or LSU job, why is your family visiting those different cities? Interesting. The other report out there is that Ole Miss, essentially, the AD over there, Keith Carter, gave him an ultimatum of sorts. Now, Lane Kiffin has since gone on the Pat McAfee show and said, you know what, I did not get an ultimatum. That wasn't true. But the whole story that was reported is that, hey, Ole Miss is like, Lane, if you're going to stay, we'd love to have you. But if you're not going to stay, we got to know here, brother. We got to know if you're going to be our head coach. Because if you're not going to be our head coach, we'd like to hire a head coach on our timing and not be left in the third wave of this cycle trying to pick up the pieces and taking the quote-unquote scraps, is how I'm phrasing this thing, of the whole coaching carousel. Andy Staples has a great article out on this right now on all3.com. Does a tremendous job on the video side as well, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. But he has a quote in his own article talking about Lane Kiffin that I think lays out where Ole Miss is at perfectly, even if it's not verbatim laid out from Ole Miss saying, hey, we need you to decide by the beginning of Egg Bowl week, Lane. We need to know by that timeline, which was the original report. More or less, that's still kind of the case if you're Ole Miss. Andy's article says, quote, the coaching carousel is a giant game of musical chairs, and right now Ole Miss doesn't know if it needs to put a chair in the circle. That's why Carter needs an answer. The next question is this. What does Carter do when he gets one? So the plot thickens. But if you follow Lane Kiffin on social media, then congratulations, you have a tremendous follow on your hands. He's always tweeting hilarious things. He's trolling. He's one of the best follows on social media. But he tweeted something out yesterday that I thought was super interesting as the feel heats up around LSU and Florida when it comes to his potential to take one of those jobs and be the next head coach in Baton Rouge or Gainesville. He tweeted out a picture from seemingly like his daily reading. Number of days, it seems like. I think he talked about it on McAfee, but essentially he has a different, I don't want to call it devotional, but it's next to that. One message for every day of the 365 days of the year. On day 223, Lane decides to tweet out this. How do you know what to do next? You have to ask yourself, honestly, what your 90-year-old self would advise you to do. What would they wish they have done? You ask yourself, honestly, what you've sensed from the beginning. What have you ignored? What have you quieted and distracted yourself from? You make two lists. This is where it gets interesting. You make two lists, the positives and the negatives, and you weigh them. And if there's one thing on the left that overpowers the dozen things on the right, you trust that. You ask yourself what path will make you more of the person you are meant to be. So let's be real here. It's very funny that Lane Kiffin's tweeting that out as he is being linked to the LSU and the Florida job, and his family is visiting Baton Rouge and Gainesville. He's talking about making a pros and cons list or tweeting out a message about a pros and cons list. That's hilarious. So I want to give this disclaimer again. I think that Lane Kiffin should stay at Ole Miss. I've said that from the jump. I've said as much that I think he will stay at Ole Miss. However, as we get more and more traction around his family visiting those cities, and it seems to be a lot of people that know things are leaning towards him taking either the LSU or the Florida job. To me, there's only so much smoke to where you can imply there's fire. Like at every single turn, Lane Kiffin had an opportunity to turn down his intrigue in the Florida and LSU job and say, no, I'm staying at Ole Miss. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving, Leo DiCaprio style. I'm staying at Ole Miss. And he has not yet done that. So the further we get into this, I'm like, man, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it might just be a duck. So I want to go back to what that messaging that he reads daily just implied. Make a pros and cons list. Well, we're going to do that for the LSU job and the Florida job as it stands right now. So the pros around the LSU job, the reason why Lane Kiffin would take that job, to me are as follows. One, track record for national championships. If it's about winning a national championship, you got a pretty good blueprint there to do that, Coach Kiffin. Nick Saban, national title. Ed Orgeron, national title. Les Miles, national title. I know Brian Kelly didn't win one, but I think we can all put two and two together and say, okay, if you think you are as good a head coach as Ed Orgeron is, and you can recruit the level those coaches did, you can win whatever you want to at LSU. That is very much so proven by the blueprint of what previous coaches did there. Also, another pro, the GM out there is elite. Like Austin Thomas, I think is quietly, based on just how people view GMs in college football, one of the best in the business. I think you will have someone there helping you put together a roster that is creme de la creme. Also, the recruiting grounds in Louisiana. It's proven if you put a fence around the boot, you can win whatever you want to win. That's what Nick Saban did, what Les Miles did, what Ed Orgeron did. Like there is nothing that you can't accomplish if you lock down the high school recruiting grounds of Louisiana. Let's be real too. Everyone that goes to high school in the state of Louisiana, more often than not, they want to be a Tiger. There's some ridiculous stat out there about the number of high schools that have the gold and purple as their high school colors, and they have the mascot, the Tiger. Like everyone in the state of Louisiana, you grow up rooting for and wanting to go to LSU. That is the standard. So when it comes to recruiting that territory, a little bit easier than recruiting maybe some other states where there's a couple different schools in the mix and you're trying to be the state in the school. That's not the deal at Louisiana. No knock on La Tech, but that's pretty much how things stand should you want to be the next head coach at LSU if you're Lane Kiffin. Now, the cons for LSU, not many, but there is a couple. One, it feels a little bit dysfunctional right now. If the governor's getting involved in a coaching search, usually that doesn't really scream cohesion and harmony and, things happen here going off without a hitch. Like that probably is one thing to look at. Also, if we want to get really in the weeds here, I don't think Lane Kiffin will ever have a problem at the quarterback position as long as he's a head coach. However, I think there's a question mark you walk into should you take that job in Baton Rouge. Now, again, I think Lane Kiffin, whether he brings someone from Ole Miss, whether he goes to the portal, or whether he just gets the most out of a one Michael Van Buren, like that is something to at least acknowledge a little bit here if you're Lane Kiffin. But you would at least have to address the quarterback position and how you're going to go about doing that if you're Lane Kiffin. It's one of the cons of taking the LSU job. But again, not many. So again, I think he should stay at Ole Miss. I've said I think he will stay at Ole Miss, but I don't know if I feel that way quite as much anymore in terms of what Lane Kiffin's going to do. The logo of LSU is another pro I meant to mention. You walk into a high school with that logo on a quarter zip, you're probably making some heads turn at the very least. So, Cato, we've talked about this a lot off the air. Everyone's kind of just guessing at this point as to what Lane Kiffin's going to do. I think Lane Kiffin, we've heard people say even he doesn't know what he's going to do just yet. Where are you at on the pros and cons of taking the LSU job? We'll get to Florida here in a second. Anything to add there? Any other thoughts you're having around Lane Kiffin maybe being the next guy to wear that visor in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, I think great pros and cons list. I think starting with the pros, one pro that was left out was the cuisine in Louisiana. I think that is a regional cuisine like no other, some would say, and you can only get it that good there. So I think that's a big pro for Lane. I think even just the idea of LSU being the premier team in the state, I think it can't go, you can't overstate that. They're the premier team in the state. As soon as you become LSU's head coach, you are all of a sudden the most watched and viewed and popular employee in the state. And I think when you look at Lane's popularity that he's garnered himself throughout his career, him being at a place at LSU, I think to me puts his brand, his face at just a different pedestal, which starts at the state level where, again, you have no competition in the state as far as eyeballs, attention, care factor. No other colleges are competing with you, but even the Saints, the Pelicans, no one's touching LSU football in that state. And I think him having his personality, I think it would take a celebrity status to another level as well, which most coaches don't care about that. But you'd like to think that's something Lane Kiffin cares about. Another thing, too, I think that's kind of underrated is just the offensive skill player, just track record. And I think that obviously his offense speaks for itself. We've seen what he's done over the years throughout his career and at Ole Miss. But on top of just being in LSU, being in Louisiana and getting top talent from in the state, there is just such a precedent for elite wide receivers, great running backs, quarterback play. I think to me, the magnetic force and just the culture and the expectation. And when you close your eyes and you think of an LSU player the last couple of years, it's someone with the ball in their hands, scoring. And it's different for everyone, obviously. But I think that too is just something that it's cool, man. The LSU, it's a little thing, but the receivers always have these cool celebrations that other people are always biting. They're, to me, LSU skill players, the gritty, they're tricking out right now. They do so many different things. They're such an important part right now, I think, of just the cool high school and up culture of being a skill player, being a wide receiver, that Lane could kind of leverage that in a very interesting way. I think all of the pros aside, though, the biggest con is the sense of dysfunction that's going on at LSU right now. And it's hard to quantify, but it feels like it's a really important thing. And I think Lane is cool with drama, but I think he likes to be the drama. Like, he likes to stir it up. And then all of a sudden you have GMs, athletic directors, governors, all getting their hands in the pot, and Lane's trying to get in there too. To me, that's a huge con for Lane, because I feel like he made it as far as he did at Ole Miss, being able to run his own show, do his own thing. I think LSU's the one spot out of all the destinations he could go to that could maybe infringe on him being able to do things his own way, especially if things don't work for a split second and people want to have their voices heard and make their decisions. So I think that's a giant con. Like, the list of pros is obviously way longer. LSU, like you mentioned, iconic brand, national championship pedigree, the skill you get in the area, all that stuff. But man, that can all come crashing down if there is not enough people seeing eye to eye at the highest level of your football team organization and for your athletic program in general. So I think it's a very interesting spot. It's a team in a very interesting place. I think the way that Brian Kelly's exit went probably isn't like helping with LSU trying to make this pitch, as they're still trying to argue with Brian Kelly over his buyout money. Like, these are all kind of red flags. You have their governor on TV. Like, there's just a lot of red flags on that side of things. So I think that's a big con, that there might be more pros, but that con can kind of even the playing field, I think, when you talk about the impact of that compared to the others.
And you brought up a good point when it comes to the function that he maybe would potentially be lacking at an LSU as it stands right now. Maybe if he takes that job, there's some guarantees of things being more cohesive. I have to imagine that would be a factor. But what he has at Ole Miss right now, like, that thing's humming.
Yeah.
He is judge, jury, executioner, the president, the governor, the secretary. Like, he is all of those things at Ole Miss. So to surrender, in theory now, I don't know how you have any – I don't know where there's a world where Lane Kiffin has as much control as he has right now at Ole Miss, at LSU. I think it's a great point. One more thing, though, that you mentioned I want to amplify, the cool factor of Lane Kiffin. He's made Ole Miss cool. Yep. And I'm not here to say Ole Miss wasn't cool before, but it's definitely cooler now. If you pour the Lane Kiffin cool sauce on an LSU, like that, I mean, that's just like gasoline and fire together. That could be kismet.
Yeah, that'd be an electric duo, man. You think about like Lane Kiffin week 1, and like Joe Burrow pulls up to the game, and Jamar Chase is at the game, and Odell Beckham's at the sideline. They're dapping up Lane Kiffin. Like, to me, like, doubling down on the coolness of LSU, because LSU is like, I think, unequivocally one of the coolest just brands and just has cool players. Like, they're doing cool stuff, man. And it's even across their sports. I mean, like, the peak of them having Jaden Daniels there and Angel Reese there and Haley Van Lith, like, they're just a cool program, man. And they have the NIL stuff figured out, and it's a destination. You know what I mean? So I think putting him in a destination when he was quite literally at the kind of the opposite of that, to be honest, a place that no one's thinking of as a must-go-to spot outside of Mississippi, I think. I mean, it'd be a multiplying factor that'd be very fun to watch for sure.
Lane State University, LSU, will be kind of fresh, kind of cool to market with. The question is, as that reading suggests, is there one reason on any other pros and cons list he has that he's weighing out that outweighs any other option that he's currently trying to sift through when it comes to staying or going to Florida or taking the LSU job? Remains to be seen. But, Cato, I want to reset that same conversation and do the pros and cons list for the potential of Lane Kiffin taking the job at Florida. Now, there's a lot of people that think that maybe Florida is the job that he ultimately ends up taking. Maybe it's the front runner right now in some people's minds. Again, I don't know. That's what some people are suggesting, or that's their opinion. Again, I don't even think Lane Kiffin knows what he's going to do, so everyone's sort of trying to play psychologist here with Lane Kiffin, which is a tricky game in and of itself. To reset here for this discussion, for those of y'all that are watching this as a one-off clip, one, make sure you're subscribed, okay? College football, nothing but college football year-round. When Lane Kiffin does make a decision, I promise you we will have a reaction to it. You can guarantee that. But the reason why we're talking about this, Lane Kiffin tweets out in his a picture of his daily reading, and the reading suggests this idea of what would you want to do with your life when it comes to what you want to be when you're 90 years old. And the reading suggests make a pros and cons list. So Lane Kiffin, we're making that cons list for you and that pros list as well, how it pertains to you maybe being the next head coach at the University of Florida. A lot of pros here. The roster is stacked right now. You can win tomorrow at the University of Florida with how much talent they have. Say what you want about Billy Napier. Say what you want about what he didn't do on game day. He left a stacked cupboard. So if you take that job before the portal opens, you can keep a lot of those top guys in Gainesville. You can have a lot of success. You hear different coaches talk about Florida after they play them in post-game press conferences, whether it be Kirby Smart, whether it be Mario Cristobal, whether it be Mike Elko. Guys that know talented rosters say one of the first things after they play Florida, that's a good roster. A lot of NFL players on that football team. So that's the first pro, if you will. The other pro, kind of going along with the thought around LSU, is like stacked, fertile recruiting grounds at the high school level. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm from the state of California. So is there some bias within me with how I view high school football, having played in one of those states that gets mentioned as one of the top tier recruiting grounds or top talents when it comes to high school football? Sure. But Florida's probably the most talented state when it comes to the high school level, and you can recruit that from a backyard standpoint. Like you throw a stone off your back porch if you're Lane Kiffin, probably hit 1 or 2 5-stars if you're living in the state of Florida. Like that's very different when it comes to how you can arm your roster year in and year out. The brand power of Florida as well. Like we said it with LSU, the same thing applies to Florida. You walk into a high school with the Florida logo on your visor, on your quarter zip, on your Jordans. Like, that moves the needle. Say what you want. That moves the needle. People understand what that Gator logo is. The affection for one Steve Spurrier sounds like it would be a pro in some ways. The reading also, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, going back to the idea of this daily reading, he tweeted out, make a pros and cons list. However, there might be one of those reasons on the pro or the con side of that list that suggests that it outweighs the others on either side of that list. Is there one reason within the Florida job that would be the outweighing reason that kind of trumps all the other reasons for Florida, LSU, we're staying at Ole Miss? Sounds like there are some family ties for a Lane Kiffin in the state of Florida, from his father-in-law to his ex-wife. Like there's some family history there. Also, Lane Kiffin, to call a spade here, he coached in the state of Florida, FAU, had some success there as well. A lot of pros for Lane Kiffin to be the next guy at Florida. It makes all the sense in the world. So the cons I have for the idea of Lane Kiffin being the next man in Gainesville, not many, but there are a couple. This is more of a question than a con. Am I allowed to be Lane Kiffin the way I've been allowed to be Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss if I'm the next head coach at Florida? I don't know the answer to that. It's just a question. And honestly, the fact that it's a question in some ways kind of can be a con, because we said it with the LSU job. At Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin is it. From what I understand, he has control. He has everything he needs from a resource perspective. He has the final say on it. Sounds like most things, if not everything. Like, Lane Kiffin has a lot of autonomy at Ole Miss. At Florida, do you have it to the degree you have it at Ole Miss? And if you don't, are you willing to leave Ole Miss for that sacrifice level of autonomy? Even if it's just like, I have 100% autonomy at Ole Miss, I have 90% autonomy at Florida. I don't know, 10% can make a big difference. It can. So I think that's a question that's worth asking. And if it's not an emphatic yes, I think that's also a discussion to be had. I don't know if this is still the case, but I just want to say it out loud for the sake of this cons list. Joel Klatt goes on the Pardon My Take podcast. Joel Klatt, y'all know who he is. He covers Fox, or he covers college football for Fox. Does a phenomenal job with this podcast. He calls the biggest game of the week for Fox, and he says, in his words, Florida is hemming and hawing at the idea of hiring Lane Kiffin, meaning they're interested, but they're not 150% committed like it sounds like some other jobs, Ole Miss and LSU, are. I don't like that idea, personally. I think that's a con. If you're not 150% committed to Lane Kiffin right now, are you going to feel that way if it's a rocky first year and you win 8 games? Like, I think you got to be 1,000% in on Lane Kiffin before you hire him for it to be as successful as you want it to. One last con here. Doesn't have the same track record of success recently that an LSU does. Now, don't get it wrong. Like, LSU and Florida, both great jobs, both have national title trophies in the trophy case. But LSU has won a national title more recently than Florida has. You got to go back to the Urban Meyer days to get a national title from Florida. But yeah, there's a lot there. Again, both are good jobs. I'm not suggesting he leaves for either of them, but it sounds like where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a lot of smoke specifically around Florida. Cato, anything you want to add here on the pros and cons list for a one Lane Kiffin? Should he take the job to be the next head coach for the Gators?
Yeah, I got to stay with the cuisine. I'm sure the seafood's better in Florida than in Oxford, so that's a pro as always. Yeah. I think one you didn't mention was just the competitiveness, especially compared to an LSU of the recruiting in-state. Is Florida an absolutely like just deep, fertile recruiting ground? Absolutely. Like no one's denying that Florida is up there. Florida, California, Georgia, those are the big three. Like, and if you're
Texas.
Texas. Sorry, Texas.
They're
They're up there though. Florida produces a ton of talent. The problem is you have to compete with Miami, with Florida State, and even worry about Kirby coming down there and grabbing some guys too. You know what I mean? So everyone's coming to Florida. LSU, you kind of are that team of the state. Like you can kind of picture like if Lane went to LSU, if there was a 5-star or a 4-star in LSU, you can kind of like pencil in that they're going to go play at LSU, especially if they're like an offensive player. You know what I mean? Florida, there's no guarantee with Miami, Florida State in the mix. A little bit more competition there. Love that you brought up them winning right now because I think DJ Lagway has said that he's a Florida Gator. He's going to stay there. Kind of gotten rocky the last couple weeks for him. Obviously, the season hasn't gone the way he planned. Could Lane bring more out of him? I don't know, but the weapons are there. They can run the ball. Like I think the plug and play of him being able to win right now is huge. And another pro we didn't even bring up, I think, about either team that's valid, especially compared to Ole Miss, is the home field advantage you get, especially compared to Ole Miss. Like the Swamp, everyone says when it's on, it's rocking, it's special. Same with Death Valley, especially with them at night. So that's something he could use in his favor as well. The con with Florida for me, it kind of goes to your hemming and hawing and some of the stuff on the behind the scenes as well. I mean, we've seen a coach win 10 games, 11 games there, and then 2 years later he's gone. So it's like, So it's like if we bring Lane in, I think a question of how long the leash is and what kind of runway he has to succeed is a good question. And I think with that comes him being himself as well, like you've mentioned before. You kind of have to give him full autonomy. If you're winning, that's always cool. But if you have some rocky, bumpy kind of areas in the road, can you overcome that? And can you see that through with Lane? Because this is kind of a program who doesn't mind some turnover, even if you achieve success, but not the highest level of success. I feel like Brian Kelly and his exit from Florida his exit from LSU rather had a lot to do with how he got along with the higher ups there. I don't think he was seeing eye to eye, and then once the record kind of backed that up, there was a reason to get him out of there. Or else I think like there's a universe where if LSU has the same track record, same record as Brian Kelly, but it's someone who's more bought into their culture, more just dialed in. They give them more time to be that next coach to win a championship, just like all of the others have before him. Yeah. Florida, they get pretty frustrated over there too if you're not producing as well, and they expect to be at that level, and it is the highest level. Like 10 wins, 11 wins, that's cool. We'll see how they get as far as how they feel about that with playoff appearances and things like that. But the fact that in their recent future they've gotten rid of Dan Mullen after 2 great years, and then 2 years it kind of goes sideways and all of a sudden he's out of there. I'd be worried about that if I was Lane Kiffin going into a Florida program that after him and a Billy Napier and some others took their swing at it and got as high to a ceiling as they could, and could maybe them staying longer allow them to break through. I think that'd be a question for me if I was Lane.
The one thing I'm trying to sort out here, because we're all trying to play the Lane Kiffin psychology game. What's he thinking? What does he want? I've heard from people that he doesn't even know what he wants just yet, which, just to put that context out there, we're not operating behind some curtain where we know what Lane Kiffin's going to do, and we're just trying to keep it from you for content's sake. Like, we're all kind of guessing here. Listening to his documentary where he talks about why he took the USC job, where he said, I couldn't live with myself not taking the job, essentially. I couldn't sit back on a Saturday and watch USC play. No, I could take that job, and then I didn't do it. I couldn't live with myself. Everyone keeps talking about the personal ties to Florida from his family's perspective, for the Steve Spurrier affection. People have reported that he wants Florida, is like things that people have murmured at least. That in itself is really interesting because it reeks a little bit of the USC. Like, is there a part of Lane Kiffin that just says, man, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't take the Florida job. If I didn't, with all the personal ties for me, if I didn't take the Florida job, I couldn't watch college football on Saturdays the same way. You wonder, is that the one reason that outweighs the others on the pros and cons list between any job? And maybe that's where we're sitting here in a few weeks, Cato. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's everyone kind of knows, like, and in any industry, you have certain jobs and destinations and roles that you would like drop everything for and do. And I think if Florida was that, we would kind of, I don't know if we'd know it by now, but it seems like Marcus Freeman with Ohio State, for example. Like that seems like kind of the only place he would leave for Notre Dame because that's his alma mater. Does Lane still have some of that for Florida or another school? Remains to be seen, and we'll find out here. I think the interesting part about all this, whether it's the pros and cons we did for LSU or Florida, NIL and money was not brought up for any of this. Because I think it's pretty clear that Ole Miss would be willing to match whatever they're offering him as far as pay goes, vice versa, obviously. And then from an NIL and portal standpoint and resources, like Ole Miss has done that at the highest level within the SEC. We know LSU and Florida are both willing to do that at the highest level as well, especially if you give them proof of concept and show you can win a little bit. I think they have donors that would gladly give some money to support a team that Lane can take to the top. So I think that kind of being a non-issue in this, I think that makes it a really interesting decision that really just comes down to his preference, I think, because if everyone's going to kind of pay you around the same, if you're going to have just as many resources, you're going to be in the most competitive league in college football, like, what do you like more? You know what I mean? So it's funny doing this exercise because that's kind of what it comes down to. We'd have to be in Lane Kiffin's brain, I think, to figure this out, and I couldn't imagine having to figure this out along with trying to defend this amazing record we have in this 10-win season we have right now. So I don't envy him in that, but I do envy him in the payday that he's about to see, probably regardless of what job he takes. But it's interesting that that's kind of been taken out of it, and now holistically he can look at this and figure out what job he just wants more. What part of his life is he in, and where does he want to be?
Yeah, one thing's for certain, Lane Kiffin, whether it's at LSU, whether it's at Florida, whether he stays at Ole Miss, he is going to be paid, right? So he can probably afford to, speaking of that cuisine, Kato, probably can afford to import some food from Louisiana and Florida should he not leave. I mean, We'll see. But again, the ultimatum that was out there that essentially was Ole Miss saying, hey, Lane, we need a decision by the week of the Egg Bowl. We need something from you, Lane. Lane Kiffin has denied that, but still, even if that's not 110% the way it was worded, Ole Miss still probably needs an answer here sooner rather than later because they want to make sure if it's not Lane Kiffin, they're not out in the cold when it comes to who their head coach is going to be in 2026. Now, you know who's going to be their head coach in 2026 is James Franklin knows he's going to be a head coach next year. It's going to be at Virginia Tech. That news broke on Monday. And there's a couple of different facets I want to unpack with this. First off, for Virginia Tech, this is great. For Florida State, this is not so great. Okay, so big-time play by Vatek. I want to say that out loud. You made a big-time move. You made a mature hire. You hired stability. You hired consistency. You hired a guy who pretty much every single year is going to win you in the range of 10 games based on what he did at Penn State once that thing gets up and really humming. Everyone wants to make that splashy hire. Sometimes they want to go for like the hot up-and-coming coordinator. Virginia Tech hired the most adult, mature candidate they could from what I've gathered with this hire. Like, they hired good decision-making, a guy who, again, is going to win, it feels like, once they get rolling around 10 games every single year, if that's what he does, relative to what he did at Penn State. The top 10 opponent thing, I keep saying this, I think that's kind of blown out of proportion when it comes to his record, because that's the big thing everyone wants to talk about when it comes to James Franklin. 4-22 against top 10 teams. Y'all, Virginia Tech, should everything hold the way it looks right now, they will play 0 top 10 teams this regular season. So I'm not really worried about the top 10 stuff with James Franklin in the ACC. Not knocking the ACC. Those are just the facts. Now, I'd love if the ACC had a bunch of teams jumping in that top 10. That'd be awesome for college football. But as it stands right now, you're not playing a Michigan and Ohio State every year. 14 of those losses in the 22 that he had against top 10 teams were either Michigan or Ohio State. More often than not, Michigan and Ohio State had better rosters than Penn State. I don't think that'll be the case for him at Virginia Tech. He's going to recruit. He already knows that area like the back of his hand. Bunch of relationships, bunch of warm handshakes he can walk into. They're going to have good players from the DMV. So I want to make sure we give our flowers to Virginia Tech for making this hire. This was a big-time move. This was a boss move. Good for Virginia Tech and the people in Blacksburg. You got a freaking dog as a head coach in James Franklin. I think that's a phenomenal get for them. Now, what I really want to go in on here is Florida State. Florida State, what are you doing? Genuinely, what are we doing here? You let your next head coach candidate, in my opinion, the best candidate you could have for your next head coaching job, walk out the door, and not only just walk out the door to where you weren't able to hire him, you now have to coach against him for the foreseeable future within your conference. Why? Because you wanted to see how things worked out with Mike Norvell over the course of the next couple of weeks? Because you weren't willing to pay a buyout? And I understand, like, it's a lot of money to buy some of these coaches out. I get that. But you know what? People that want to win at the highest level, they're willing to pay the price, both physically, both metaphorically, and financially. LSU, you think it was easy to fire Brian Kelly? Probably not. $50+ million, probably not a fun price tag to pay at the jump, at least. No, they're still working that whole thing out. Not ideal, but guess what? LSU wants to win at the highest level. So they say, hey, mediocre's not going to cut it. We're going to make a move. Sucks we have to pay this buyout, but we want to win at the highest level. We're willing to pay that price. Florida State, why don't you do the same thing? You're in much worse positioning than LSU is. I understand Mike Norvell won the ACC a couple of years ago. I think it was awesome. I think Mike Norvell, quite frankly, contrary to how people will feel watching this video, I think he's actually a good coach. I think he's proven he's a good coach. But he's also proven he's extremely inconsistent. James Franklin, his worst year as a head coach, 6 wins. Worst year. Right now, Florida State, you're coming off a year where you won 2 games. And this year's not looking a whole lot better than that. Florida State. And this is my thing. Florida State, you're acting like you're not Florida State is my problem with this whole conversation. Like, if you were a lesser caliber logo or had less pedigree and it was a position where it's like, hey, who are we really going to hire if we fire Mike Norvell right now? That'd be a different discussion. But you think about Florida State, you think about what that brand is, you think about that tradition, you think about national championships. I close my eyes, I see Bobby Bowden, I see Peter Warwick, I see Deion Sanders. I see them hoisting that crystal ball, having won the last BCS national title with Jameis Winston. That's what I see. Like, for me, purely speaking from like a fatherly perspective, if my daughter's dating a scrub, I'll be like, why are you dating a scrub? You're so much better than that. You're worth so much more than that. Florida State, again, I'd hate to, in this metaphor, call Mike Norvell a scrub, but like, you are worth way more than what you're dealing with right now. You're better than selling for 2-10 one season and trying to be bowl eligible the next. Like, what are we doing here, Florida State? What are we doing? Like, you just let, again, the guy who I think was exactly right for your job get hired away, not just away, but in your conference? Now, could Florida State hire somebody awesome still? Absolutely. Absolutely. You could go hire a coordinator. You could go hire an Alex Golish, who I think would be a great get for you. But are you going to hire a more sure thing than what you could have hired with James Franklin? A guy who was, 100+ wins and 45 losses in his career at Penn State? No. There's not a more sure thing out there. So again, I understand that this was something that would have cost you a pretty penny, and it would have been ugly in some ways, changing coaches during the season, but it would have been decent pain for, I think, a much more achievable gain if you had been able to make a move and hire James Franklin, and now you're sitting on your hands saying, man, what could have been? And Florida State, with what you are overall as a program and your history and your brand, you're worth more than that. You're worth more than that, and this is probably a tough pill to swallow today. It would be for me if I was a Florida State fan, and just discouraging to see a team not take action and to pay the price for it, in the sense that they're going to pay the price for it here, coaching against James Franklin here going forward. So it's my thought on that whole thing, but we will obviously monitor the Florida State job should it become available, and we've given you our thoughts on that already a number of times on this show, so we won't relitigate that, but James Franklin, big-time move for Virginia Tech, going out and grabbing him. Speaking of big-time moves, Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos reported Arizona State quarterback Sam Leavitt, his return to the program after this year is supposedly doubtful. Leavitt's camp is actively shopping the talented passer at, quote, the highest level. Interesting. Very interesting. So, again, just to put this out there, Sam Leavitt not officially in the transfer portal as of right now. But if Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos are reporting it, I'm trusting it. Sounds like he may not be back at Arizona State next year. So I don't think it's inappropriate, with that report being out there, to just kind of speculate a little bit. Should Arizona State not be where Sam Leavitt plays college football at next year? That's a dude who can throw the pigskin now. It's a talented dude at quarterback. He's got a Big 12 title to his name. NFL future for number 10, Sam Leavitt. Where could he potentially end up at? Now, Sam Leavitt, hear me clearly. The Cornell Big Red would love your services. We're throwing the ball around the yard right now. We got a head coach that's in his second year, going to be his third year next year. So we're ascending, brother. You want to go get a premier education and you want to go play in the Ancient Eight, one of the most storied conferences in college football, the Cornell Big Red will happily take you, Sam Leavitt. We'll talk about that later. Off the air, rather. Sam, if you want to give me a call. But I think Tennessee would be awesome for Sam Leavitt, dude. Awesome. Like, do we see what Josh Heupel is doing right now with Joey Aguilar? An individual who had never played a snap of Power 4 football just yet, walks into the SEC, walks into that offense, and starts getting buckets. One of the best passers in the country, probably changed his NFL future. I'm Sam Leavitt. I'm saying I can do that. With Josh Heupel, I can get spring practice at least and probably set up to be able to do something like that. The marriage of Josh Heupel and Sam Leavitt together, I think, would be absolutely phenomenal. Also, Tennessee, you're going to need a quarterback, it looks like here. If I'm reading how things are probably going to break with Joey Aguilar not getting more eligibility, that's how I think this whole thing is going to go, I would love that. I would absolutely love that. If I'm Sam Leavitt, I'm just saying, can I not turn it over like Joey Aguilar? If that's the case, can win a lot of ball games in Knoxville, play in the SEC, have a really good filter for pro scouts when it comes to assessing your tape for the next level. I'd be here for Sam Leavitt, Tennessee, y'all, just to keep it a buck. Y'all, we're kidding ourselves if we think Miami is not going to be in the transfer portal quarterback market. That'd be another team I'm going to watch here for Sam Leavitt should he end up going into the transfer portal. The past 2 years, Miami has landed Cam Ward, been in the mix for John Mateer, and landed Carson Beck. Translation, they're going to go after a portal quarterback, is how I'm reading this whole thing. Should anything change, we'll see. But that's the way this whole thing is looking. If I'm Sam Leavitt, too, I'm looking at the blueprint out there from a one Cam Ward. Transfer to Miami, have a big year, go be the number 1 overall pick. Not a bad situation. We'll see how this whole script reads for Carson Beck at the end of this year. But I think you see the potential in that system. You see the potential of going to Coral Gables and having success in that offense, throwing to those receivers. There's a lot there. They're going to air it out. As long as Shannon Dawson's the OC out there, Miami would be a destination for me if I were a portal quarterback. And it looks like Sam Leavitt may be a portal quarterback. So I would keep an eye on Miami and the Canes to be in that market once again. Hey, how about Indiana? The portal track record there when it comes to the quarterback position in a 2-year sample size under Coach Cignetti. Curtis Rourke had a tremendous year, taking Indiana to the college football playoff in 1 year there. And now Fernando Mendoza, probably going to be a top 10 pick when he comes out. Again, if I'm Sam Leavitt, I'm looking at that and saying, okay, it's not a bad spot to show up at. Also, go play in the Big Ten. You likely play against some of the better competition that you maybe wouldn't play against in the Big 12. I think Indiana makes all the sense in the world if I'm a portal quarterback. And if I'm Sam Leavitt, I would absolutely take a look at that program to be my next destination with the pristine track record there when it comes to quarterbacks they've acquired and getting them up to speed and having tremendous years in a 2-year sample size under Cignetti. Now, a couple more spots, but I'm going to go ahead and label these destinations for Sam Leavitt as hinge destinations. Now, not the app, not the dating app. These are destinations where they hinge on one thing breaking Sam Leavitt's way for them to be in a spot where they would need a quarterback for the majority of these. It'll make sense. Alabama, if Ty Simpson leaves, he's like, yeah, you know what? I kind of tore up the SEC for 1 year. I'm probably going to be the top quarterback in this draft class. Maybe Alabama wins a national championship, and Ty Simpson says, you know what? I'm good. Alabama would make a ton of sense for Sam Leavitt. Literally, if your goal is to be an NFL quarterback, go play for an offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb, who was just in the NFL like 30 seconds ago. Also, playing in the SEC, you have the filter of playing against some of the best competition in college football. I think that would make a lot of sense for Sam Leavitt should Ty Simpson decide to go pro. Now, in the same way, Sam Leavitt's from Oregon. Whenever anybody jumps in the transfer portal, one of the first things I go to look at to try and get a gauge for where they could end up at is, hey, where are you from? Because honestly, a lot of us, man, anytime you leave home for college, whether you're a student or an athlete, the desire your freshman year at some point throughout your college career is to get back close to home. So if Sam Leavitt jumps in the portal, Oregon can make a lot of sense. Now, this all hinges upon the idea of, well, does Dante Moore want to go pro? Maybe it's the same discussion we just had with Ty Simpson. Dante Moore's looking at his draft stock like, yeah, it's looking pretty nice right now. I could be a first-round draft pick. If that's the reality, he jumps to the NFL. Sam Leavitt gets to go back close to home, play for an offense under Will Stein, assuming he's the OC there, that has developed Bo Nix, Dillon Gabriel, and now Dante Moore, all to the tune of having them be Heisman finalists, if Dante Moore's a Heisman finalist potentially, or NFL draft pick. I mean, Bo Nix was a first-round draft pick. So there's a lot there for Sam Leavitt. Should he have the opportunity to be the guy at Oregon, that would make sense to me. And this last destination is sort of a couple of destinations baked into one. If I'm Sam Leavitt, I am monitoring very closely wherever Lane Kiffin goes or if he stays at Ole Miss. Because honestly, like, I like DJ Lagway. I'd take Sam Leavitt over DJ Lagway today. LSU, we'll see what happens with Michael Van Buren and that whole quarterback room. I'd be hard-pressed to not take Sam Leavitt to be my starter should I end up being the head coach at LSU. If he stays at Ole Miss, we'll see what happens with Trinidad Chambliss and Austin Simmons. But, like, I take Sam Leavitt over a lot of those guys as well. Now, I don't know if it's like a far and away I'll take Sam Leavitt over Trinidad Chambliss conversation, but you see where I'm going with this. If Lane Kiffin will take you as his quarterback, given his track record, that to me would be very difficult to turn down if I'm Sam Leavitt, regardless of who Lane Kiffin is coaching next season. So, a lot of options on the table there, it seems like, for Sam Leavitt. We'll see what happens if he actually jumps into the transfer portal, but those options, in my mind, would make sense should they be on the table for him. But again, Steve Wiltfong, Pete Nakos, both reporting that it is doubtful Sam Leavitt's back at Arizona State next year and that his camp is currently shopping him around. The plot thickens. Modern college football, baby. Players not in the portal just yet, but we're having discussions about where they could be next year, and that's the world we're currently living in. Now, the world we currently live in on this show is one we like to translate what head coaches are really saying at their press conferences during the week. I keep on saying this. Coaches aren't trying to be dishonest. They just aren't able to be as honest as they maybe would like to be. That's where we come in. So I want to translate a couple head coaches right now, starting with one, Kirby Smart. He was asked about the youth of his roster and how he's getting them ready to play. And I thought his answer was really revealing as to the current status of college football and what they have going on internally at Georgia. Check this out.
I mean, we're going to be young every year, so I don't think college football is going to have old teams anymore. I think they're going to be youth across the board, and I'm going to have to get used to being patient because it's what it is. How fast can you grow your youth compared to others? But I'm proud of this group and what they've done. They've got good intangibles. They work hard. They'll get tested this week in terms of their focus and how well they can continue to elevate as opposed to just sit there and idle by. They got to make a choice on whether they want to continue to get better.
Translation: the transfer portal is killing what old college football's depth used to look like. It's not breaking news. Other coaches have essentially said that nearly verbatim. But what Kirby Smart is saying is we're not going to have old teams anymore, so therefore, what does it become about? It becomes about how quickly you can develop that youth over the course of a season. So what is that tied to? Your culture. Kirby Smart is saying it's about culture, for us at least here at the University of Georgia, more than it's ever been. Like if I don't have that senior or that junior to bring my young bucks up the way that maybe I'd like to have it, in any given year, it's going to be about what we as coaches, what we as an organization are able to do, bringing that youth along. And that's, I think, the most important part about what Georgia's been able to do this year. They feel like such a Kirby Smart-ish team. We've said that before on the show. It feels like this team really embodies what he's about. Don't beat yourself, disciplined, physicality, details, all those things. Georgia majors in that. It's a lot of guys who haven't played in a bunch of SEC championship games or national title games. Like, this is a lot of first and second year players. And so the fact that Kirby Smart's able to bring this group along as quickly as he has, that goes back to Georgia's culture, their way of doing things. That is why Georgia's operating at the level they're operating right now. So the translation there for Kirby Smart, it's probably going to be this year. Every single year here at Georgia in modern college football, everyone's going to have young teams, but we feel good about where we stand because of our culture. Then he was also asked about their success in the red zone offensively for the Dogs. Been pretty good this year. I think his answer was pretty revealing. Also maybe implying where Georgia's culture is at relative to some other places across the country. Take a listen.
Ability to run the ball. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, do your red area stats. And, if you struggle to run the ball, you're going to struggle in the red area. There's nowhere else to go. You can't throw it up there in the 10th row. You gotta go through somebody's face. And that's hard to do for a lot of people, and it's hard to do for us, but we're committed to it. And same way on defense, you got to be able to stop them from doing that. And I think Gunner's legs have helped with that. Creativity on offense with Bobo, his staff, John Lilly in particular helps with the red area. They've done a tremendous job.
Translation: we're really about that life here at Georgia. We're committed to being tough. I love that he said this. It's tough for us, too, to be physical and run through people's faces, but we're committed to it. It's our identity. It's what we're about. When you get to the red zone, Kirby Smart says this. This isn't really a translation, but just kind of elaborating on what he's saying. the area of the field you have to throw the football or try to spread teams out, that's not really there anymore. It's a condensed world you're living in. So you can't be as tricky schematically, and you can't be as dependent on your passing game because there's less room to run routes and less room to throw the football. So how do you have success in the red zone? Running through people's faces, to quote Kirby Smart. And I love every single part of that. That's really what college football is about too, quite frankly. Like I keep going back to this idea of the things that used to work in college football still work. Schemes change, evolve. I think the quarterback is becoming even more important than it was previously. But just like he was saying with having young teams and how culture is important in that, modern technology for us today has made it so easy to connect with people and send emails and have professional conversations. But what still wins out? Face-to-face conversations, firm handshakes, trusting someone's word, those things still matter. Just like running the football and strong culture, that still matters. You can have all the RPOs you want, all the spread formations you want, all the wide splits you want, however you want to draw it up. But if you can't run the football, if you're not committed to being tough, have problems in the red zone. Kirby Smart's like, no, we know that, we understand that, it's still our identity, and we're committed to being tough here at Georgia. Now, this last quote from Kirby Smart at his press conference, man, if I could take it as a daily vitamin, I would. Listen to what Kirby Smart has to say about players that maybe want to hit the portal because Georgia's a little bit too tough for them, a little bit too physical with how they practice. Take a listen.
We schedule them. The ones that want to leave, we schedule them. We try to get them on the schedule because when they want to leave because they're not physical, that means they're probably going to a place that's not physical. We like those places. We like to play them. We prefer them, actually, if you can get them on the schedule. So it's one of those deals that you don't run from hard in life. You run from hard in life, you'll find more hard.
I love that. He walks out of his press conference after that answer. How's that for a mic drop, dude? I love everything about this. What Kirby Smart is saying, the translation there, they're not like us. They're not. Like, if you want to leave the University of Georgia because it's too physically taxing for you, it's too tough, more power to you, but we're going to make sure that we get to play you in the future. Now, how that whole thing works with scheduling and how many years out in advance it goes and how you try and go after those specific players, I don't know how that all works, but just the sentiment behind it, what Kirby Smart is saying is we don't bend the knee to anything culturally. Players can hit the portal. Good for them. I love player mobility. But if you don't want to be here at Georgia and you want to leave, cool, we're coming after you. We're not bending the knee to how you feel about it. We're not bending the knee to modern culture of, we got to take it easy on these kids and be soft. Like, no, not at Georgia. Why? Because we know our way works. Because if you're Kirby Smart, you have multiple national titles to your name that verifies your way works. So, yeah, we practice tough. Yeah, things are hard internally at Georgia when it comes to how we do Bloody Tuesday and how we practice during the week. Good, because guess what? The games are hard. I love Kirby Smart says it. Life's hard. You run from hard in life. Life brings you more hard. You don't get to escape the difficult things in life and achieve the results that you want to achieve. So what Kirby's saying there is if you're not like us, that's okay, but we're going to make sure that we try and hunt you down and we force the issue against you should we ever have the opportunity to. We like being our own breed. The more the landscape changes, the more things evolve. Yeah, it presents different challenges for Georgia, but when you lock the gates on a Saturday, you play 4 quarters, we like our process. We like our way of doing things more than yours because we haven't taken any shortcuts when it comes to the physical demands on our players. So I love Kirby Smart and the way that he just bringing bars to his own press conference. Another coach I want to translate here, Mike Elko obviously had a lot to talk about after their comeback win over South Carolina. You're down 27 at half, and you find a way to scratch and claw and fight back. And someone asked him, hey, Coach, was that a teachable moment for you and your football team getting down by that much? And I thought his answer gave a lot of good context to how he's viewing his team, but also just the world of college football right now.
Everybody's getting into these situations, these moments where, the teams that are going to have successful seasons are going to find ways to make plays and win games, and the teams that aren't, are going to find ways to lose them. And I just think that's kind of where we're at right now in college football. And so, yeah, for sure, teachable moments about like trying to stay out of those situations for sure, but probably also pointing out that, while you don't want those massive swoons, at the end of the day, we're probably going to wind up in more of those types of fourth quarter situations than we want to. And the resiliency to continue to find ways to win games is ultimately going to be what defines success in this program as we move forward.
Translation. Is it a teachable moment to be down by 27 at half and to find a way back and to win the game? Absolutely. but we're not special. This is what college football is, y'all. And you know what? He's right. We just saw Indiana play with their food against Penn State and need a acrobatic catch from Amar Cooper to get his foot down and keep Indiana's undefeated season alive. We just saw Georgia down, it feels like, the entirety of the first 2 months of the season at any given point in time throughout a college football game. Like, teams in modern college football, it's hard to have your fastball every single week. So while you try to avoid those situations, it's just kind of the nature of the beast right now in college football, man. You're not going to always have a dominant showing and have your team all the way locked in the right state of mind to play. Like, it's just kind of the world we're living in. So, yeah, it's teachable, but we're not special because we got down. Like, everybody gets down. We like to not get down by 27 points, but the fact that we had to be resilient is what's going to make us successful here going forward. And as they got down in that first half, you saw Twitter running rampant with battered Aggie syndrome is back, Texas A&M choking once again. And it's like, yeah, I see where you're coming from, but I think battered Aggie syndrome at this point in time, when you talk about A&M, it's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy waiting to happen. Like, let's just put ourselves in this frame of mind. Let's say A&M doesn't come back in that game, or they come back and still lose by a score or 2 scores. Everyone would have ran with the narrative, see, battered Aggie syndrome. See, Texas A&M, they just choke it away once again when they should have won a game. They didn't do it. Again, I see where you're coming from, but if somebody else did that, you wouldn't cry battered Aggie syndrome, or you wouldn't cry, man, Ohio State's cursed. They lost the game in the second half. I mean, Ohio State didn't bring their best ball to the table. It's just like, this is just modern college. This just happens. And quite frankly, as much as we want to throw around the battered Aggie syndrome stuff and talk about A&M and their history with choking or whatnot, like, I trust actually Texas A&M a lot more for having been in this spot and found a way back. Now, I understand the first half makes you nervous that they're capable of doing that, but guess what? When they get to the college football playoff and Texas A&M is down by a touchdown in the third quarter, who do you feel better about? A team that's already had a second half comeback over the course of their season, or a team that's blown everybody out by 50 and they're unfamiliar with a little bit of extra stress and strain in the second half? I'd much rather take the team that's been in the fires of adversity and found a way out of it. And A&M now, effectively, is a team with those credentials, and I think that's worth noting. Now, a question we had after this game, I think everyone had it, and someone asked this question, Mike Elko, is, Coach, what did you say to the boys at half to get them fired up? Thought his answer was a really good peek into the window of what Texas A&M culture is now.
This speech, I'm sure, will come out at halftime, and everyone thinks this is this amazing speech at halftime. It's not. Like, we won that game 6 months ago with what we did in the winter. Like, we didn't win that game because I went in at halftime and said something. Like, we built a culture, we built a character, we built a commitment to doing things the way we want to do them back in January and February, and that's what came out in the second half. And it's not like, oh, I went in and I riled them up, and because I riled them up, they started playing. Like, that's not how this works.
I loved every part of that. Love every part of that. Because Mike Elko is saying there, the translation is, it wasn't about me giving the team verbal caffeine. It wasn't about me giving them this win one for the Gipper speech. It's about how we're genuinely wired. Like, people say this, whenever adversity hits, you don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the standard of your training. That's what Texas A&M did when things got crazy. Like, yeah, I'm sure Mike Elko probably gave him some words of wisdom. He said that they had different leaders in the locker room, speaking up from Marcel Reed to Torian York. That's all well and good, but guess what? Those are just words. It doesn't matter. You can't hide who you are or pep talk yourself into a comeback when you're down 27 points at half. You can't do it. So Mike Elko is saying we've done the work during the winter period, during spring practice, during how we get after it in the weight room. We've done all the work now. We've done the real recoding, rewiring of what Texas A&M football is. And that's what you saw in the second half. Halftime speeches are great. Halftime speeches are fun for us on social media, but like, this is who we are in. There's no running and hiding. This is who we are internally now when we go make a second half showing like that. And A&M fans, hear me loud and clear. This is rare. It's easy to get caught up in the A&M lens and say, oh, good for A&M. Used to have a poor culture. Now they have a better culture relative to A&M standards. Like, this is just rare across college football to have a team wired the way that A&M is wired right now, to be down 4 scores at halftime and to not get drunk on negativity, to not go pointing fingers, to not implode and have a worse second half, to be able to steady the ship, hit the reset button, and go win a game like that, that is rare. So what Mike Elko is saying you should be excited about, he's saying this is who we are now, but you should be excited about it in the context of just like the scope of the college football world. Congratulations, you are an elite culture team, A&M. Not a good culture team. Not had a good Saturday, a lot of talent bailed you out. No, you are an elite culture team, which is something that's nice to say if you're an A&M fan, but I think it's a big deal just across any team in college football, regardless of where you're ranked. So Mike Elko giving us a little peek into the house there culturally. Thought there was some really revealing things he said during that press conference. Glad we could translate them for Coach and the good folks out there in College Station. Now, one more coach I want to translate is Michigan's very own Sherrone Moore. The boys found a way in Wrigley Field to beat Northwestern, scrappy game, and Sherrone Moore just gave his thoughts on the week that was, and he made a couple of remarks around Bryce Underwood and his progress. I thought they were really intriguing. Go ahead and take a listen to what he had to say about his freshman quarterback after the win over Northwestern, heading into a new week with Maryland on the docket.
Everybody's very aware of what we need to fix and what we need to do, but there's a lot of positives in the game. Bryce, people will talk about the turnovers, but I hope people talk about that third down throw to Andrew Marsh. Not just the first one that led to a touchdown, but that second one that led to the game-winning field goal, or the third down run that he had on 3rd and 5 to escape to make sure we get a field goal. So there were some heroic plays that young man made in the game that people need to highlight. He had the mistakes that we all have to help him out as a team, but he had some plays that were outstanding along with Andrew and some of the other guys. And
translation, I know there were some mistakes. I know how it looks on the box score. But if you're really watching the tape, if you're really looking at what this guy is doing week in and week out, and what I'm seeing as the head coach behind closed doors here, we like where Bryce Underwood is at. And I think that's really interesting because watching that game, what Sherrone Moore is saying, if you actually watch the full 4 quarters, you see some pop moments from Bryce Underwood. The kid still threw for 280. Still had a couple of just, that's different level of throws to Andrew Marsh and a couple of plays with his feet that he made where you see the bones there for Bryce Underwood to be a special player for Michigan and just in the context of college football. And I think this is worth noting because sometimes you're closer than how it actually looks on Saturday. Like, college football is a cruel game where a detail here and a play there makes the entire difference. But, really, it's 3 plays that make the difference with how we view Bryce Underwood coming away from that game and saying, kid's turnover prone, to then saying, oh, wow, he had a huge day at the office and Michigan kind of rolled. It really was that close for Bryce Underwood. So what my gut is saying, based on what Sherrone Moore is saying, the translation I'm picking up here in addition to we like where Bryce is at, we're going to keep putting more on his plate. We're not backing off of the Bryce Underwood experience here. We're not getting scared away by a couple of turnovers. We understand what it's going to take to beat Ohio State. It's going to take more than 9 for 16, 62 yards, and 2 picks that beat Ohio State last year. Probably going to take more than that. We feel great about Bryce Underwood and the plays that he's made. Yeah, there's some stuff to clean up, but we got to help him out, and we like his trajectory as it stands right now going into the last 2 games of the regular season. So not a lot of concern in his voice from what I could gather on how Sherrone Moore is viewing the progress of a one Bryce Underwood. I think he likes the way my man's trending. All right. Now, he was also asked about how Michigan's approaching their game before the game in Ohio State with them going to College Park, Maryland, and playing the Terps. Check this out.
Don't even talk about the final game. I'm doing it. Don't even do it. Don't even do it.
Trap game spot, Maryland.
No, it's not a trap game. This is a good team, man. This is not a trap game. There's nothing about this game that is a trap game. There's 0 trap game on this. This is about a really good team that if you don't play well, you will get beat. So there's that trap. The trap is like the Nick Saban poison comment, trying to get us. No, not a trap game. And everybody knows what's ahead, but we got to go execute. We got to go prepare for this one. Like our lives depend on it. It's a playoff game for us in this building, and there's no trap game with this one.
Translation: it's a trap game. It's a trap. How could it not be a trap game? You almost lost to a 5-win Northwestern team. You play Ohio State next week for your college football playoffs live. How could you not be looking ahead at that game? You get them in Ann Arbor. You've beat them multiple years in a row now. You feel like you're better now. You think Ohio State's better probably, but you think you're better at quarterback at the very least. How could it not be a trap game? It's a trap game, and that's okay that it's a trap game, but sometimes you got to say it out loud so many times to convince yourself that it's not a trap game to where, yeah, it's a trap game. And to be real now, look at the last couple of games that Michigan's played against Maryland. 2023, the year that Michigan won the freaking national championship. Go to College Park, Maryland. You got a war on your hands. Final score, 31-24. So I understand there was an onside kick there that made it a little bit closer. It felt closer than it maybe really was. But I don't know. One score the week before you played Ohio State. Same deal. I don't know. Trap game. 2022 also won by one score, 34-27. So, there was a history here of Maryland playing Michigan relatively close, even when Michigan's absolutely rolling. Also, Maryland, they're 4-6 right now. I'm not dunking on Maryland, but, that record and that logo don't get me super excited. So, yeah, it's a trap game. It's a trap game. It's a trap game. It's a trap game. But the way that you get your team off of that vibe is telling them, hey, it's not a trap game. It's a good team. It's a playoff game. It's all those things. And what he's saying about it being a playoff game for Michigan in a lot of ways is still true. But it's a game that if you don't bring your best with that team at their place, freshman quarterback that's had some moments this year in Malik Washington, yeah, it's a trap game, especially with the spot right before Ohio State. So for Sherrone Moore, we appreciate him bringing the juice and him giving us some things to translate there. But speaking of this being a trap game, speaking of the Ohio State game, if you're a Michigan fan, you want to be at both those games. Say, hey, JD, I want to go to College Park and see us punch our ticket to then have a college football playoff play-in game against Ohio State. Awesome. The best way to do that is with Game Time. If you want to get to the game in Ann Arbor against Ohio State, best way to do that is with Game Time. Game Time, safe, fast, effective, easy way to purchase tickets. If you're in Ann Arbor the morning of the Ohio State game, and you're kind of going back and forth, you want to be at a tailgate, but then you're like, maybe I want to actually go to the game. I'm not sure. I just want to be around it and kind of play this thing up to the very last minute. Game Time allows you to do that, tracking ticket prices in real time. Now, I'll be honest with you. If you're waiting until the last minute to buy a Michigan-Ohio State ticket, I don't recommend that, but you can guarantee you're getting the best price and the best ticket using Game Time. So if you hear nothing else, hear this. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code HARDCOUNT for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code HARDCOUNT for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. So a lot of good stuff across the board from the coaches giving us some stuff to translate. We did some pros and cons for Lane Kiffin, reacted to the playoff rankings. Hey, we got a couple more weeks here in this regular season. Then it's conference title time. Then it's playoff time. Some people might start tuning out a little bit with the regular season trailing off here for us in the world of college football. Not you, though. You're a college football sicko. We appreciate you actually even ramping up your efforts, ramping up the level of dialed you are to this sport. So thank you for that. Thank you for being subscribed and making this show what it is. For Cato on the ones and the twos and the mic, for myself, JD PicKell, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all.